Hello, and welcome back to SEMA's Shifting Gears Back to Business webinar series. This series focuses on providing tips and tools for the automotive aftermarket businesses to navigate business operations in this current COVID-19 environment. My name's Gavin Knapp. I'm the Director of Market Research for SEMA. And before I bring on today's speaker, Gene Marks, to talk about tactics to grow your business over the next few years, I have some quick housekeeping to go through. Okay, so today's session is going to be about an hour. During our time, we invite you to submit questions or comments. Just look at the dashboard on your screen, find the questions tab, and type your questions right in there. Towards the end, we'll be addressing some of those questions, and we'll try to get as many as we can. So throughout our Shifting Gears series, we've covered quite a few topics: building customer confidence, cash flow tactics, digital do's and don'ts and uncertainty. And today we wrap up the series with Beyond the Pandemic. In a recent survey we did of the industry, about half of companies said that even in these weird times, their 2020 sales were going to be as good or even better than 2019 were. So I think this is a really good time for us to be shifting and really looking at what are our next steps in coming out of the pandemic. So I'd like to welcome back our speaker today, Gene Marks, CPA with the Marks Group. Nationally, Gene appears regularly on MSNBC and Fox News, as well as the John Batchelor Show and SiriusXM's Wharton Business Channel, where he talks about the financial, economic, and technology issues that affect business leaders today. Through his keynotes and breakout sessions, Gene helps business owners, executives, and managers understand the political, economic, and technological trends that will affect their companies, and most importantly, the actions they can take to continue to grow and profit. So Gene, it's all yours.
Gavin, thank you very much. I appreciate it very much. And everybody, thank you for joining me today. I'm really happy to be here. Gavin tells me I've got about 3 or 4 hours to speak, so plenty of time to get through. Just kidding, not 3 or 4 hours. This will be about an hour, but I'll be talking to you as well. I'm going to do my best to leave you some time to answer, ask some questions. Don't feel bad if you can't get your question in time. You can put it in through the Q&A panel, but by all means, you can email me separately. I'm going to give you my email address at the very end of this presentation, so by all means, feel free to do that. We have a lot to talk about in the automotive aftermarket industry. It has been a very strange year so far. Very good for some people, not so great for other people. It is, I have to admit, guys, in the 25 years I've been running my business, I have never seen the level of uncertainty that we are facing right now. It is a very strange environment that we are in right now. We're still nowhere near out of the woods when it comes to COVID. We've still got a lot of places that are shut down, slowly reopening. There are hot spots around the country. Got all those things we're worried about. We have presidential elections that are coming up in just a couple of months, and a strange presidential election where there's more uncertainty around the incumbent and what he'll do if he's elected as opposed to his opponent, which is an interesting sort of situation to be in. But listen, you're a business owner, so it is your important to always be looking ahead, because there are people that are relying on you to make the right decisions, to navigate your company through the good times, the bad times, all the things that we've got ahead of us, and I want to help you with that. So what I'm going to do is I want to share with you some of the biggest issues that we're all facing right now. And this comes from my readers, from my clients, from the people that I speak to all around the country. I've been doing it virtually, but also speaking to a lot of people, on the phone and by email, whatever. This is what's going on in the world of business, some of the hottest issues that are out there. More importantly, what steps people are taking to address those issues. So I want to give you some tactics that you can take. The good news is none of this stuff came from me, so it's not my original ideas. I'm going to share with you the ideas and the strategies and the tactics from people a lot smarter than me, other leaders and other executives and people that are running their companies. Now, I realize we're doing this online, so when I realize you have a lot of other distractions, that you could be doing. So I want to make sure that you're paying attention as we go along. So as I go through different topics, I'll be stopping and asking a few questions, giving you the opportunity to just kind of test yourself. They're really easy questions, true, false questions. I like to ask them because they're kind of fun to do. I'll give you an example of something like this one. Like I have a true, false question. True or false, guys? In 1969, the Apollo 11 astronauts were required to fill out customs forms before returning to Earth. Is that true or false? It's actually true, believe it or not. Not only were they required to fill out customs forms, this is the actual customs form that the astronauts had to fill in. It literally said that they departed the moon on July 24th, 1969. So just remember, everything's in perspective. You know, you think that things are bad with immigration now. Things have been bad for many, many years as well. That's just so you know. How about this one, true or false? In 1974, so that is 3,000-year-old mummy could be flown to Paris for necessary repairs. The Pharaoh Ramses II was issued a valid Egyptian passport. Is that true or false? It's true. That's the passport. That's the actual passport that was issued to him. And by the way, just as an aside, that's Keith Richards, right? Okay, yeah. And finally, true or false? 10% of Americans think that chocolate milk comes from brown cows. It's actually false. It's 7% of Americans think that chocolate milk comes from brown cows. That's according to the American Daily Producers Survey. Okay, so let's go to some serious stuff, right? We're running a business. We're trying to figure out where things are going. It's our jobs to know where the economy is going so that we can make decisions that are affect our investments, affect our cash flow, affect our hiring, in fact, how we're managing our business. We have to look ahead. Now, when you look at the headlines, you want to think to yourself, when will, it's not even a matter of when, will the economy recover? Of course, we know the economy is going to recover, but the big question is when. When will this happen? We have hit an unprecedented economic downturn, and most business owners, they want to base their decisions, their investment, their spending, their hiring decisions on when things are going to start to pick up. Now, I'll have to tell you this much, okay? If you're following some of the big economic metrics that are out there, gross domestic product, the unemployment rate, things like that, I need to warn you, those are not the metrics that you should be following. If you are following certain economists out there, let me warn you, if you haven't figured this out already, the economists have different opinions. I mean, Treasury Secretary Mnuchin says we should be out of the recession by the end of this year. Of course, a bunch of economists at the UCLA say we're in for a depression-like crisis that's going to extend into 2021. Oh, but then again, Wall Street thinks the economy will recover fast. As I speak now, it's up another couple hundred points just today. But then again, another group of economists from Massachusetts says the U.S. economy, we're continuing on a disastrous downward spiral. The Federal Reserve just a couple of weeks ago said the path of the economy will depend significantly on the course of the virus. Brilliant. The bottom line is this. All of these economists, all of these experts, all of these academics, all of the people that say they know where the economy is going, they don't know where the economy is going. Do you know why they don't know where the economy is going? This is why they don't know where the economy is going. No one really knows. I mean, I could put up 10 economists from MIT who says we'll be out of recession by the end of the year, and I'll give you another 10 from Harvard that'll say no, this recession is going to last into 2021 and beyond. But listen, we can't spend time getting to know these guys and listening to these guys. We need data so we can run our businesses and make our plans. I have a few metrics that I would like to share with you, about 7 of them that I track every week. These are metrics that are telling me where the economy is going. They will indicate to me when recovery will be happening and how fast that recovery is happening. And it will help me advise my clients when they can start making investments, hiring people, and spending some money. And I'd like to share those 7 metrics with you right now. And here they are. The first metric that I like to look at, it's the open table state of the restaurant industry. Now, Open Table is a mobile app. If you've never used it before, you use it to make reservations at restaurants. Super popular at big and small cities all around the country. Well, you know what? Every week, Open Table publishes their restaurant reservations. And let me share with you the most recent data. It's going up, which is good news. Now, it is nowhere near where it was back before COVID happened, but you can see it's about 40 to 50% of those levels now, but continuing to trend up. So I'm watching that every week as we get into the end of August and now into September. We'll see where the data continues to go and if it trends up even faster. When people are eating out in restaurants as they continue to open up around the country, great sign for the economy. Retail spending is very important. So that's metric number 1. The second metric I'd like to look at, the TSA, Transportation Security Administration, they publish weekly the travelers going through the US airports. And this is what those numbers look like. The blue line on the very top is the travelers at this point last year, and the red line down below are the travelers this point this year. not great. You can see at this time last year, we had about 2.5 million people that were traveling through the airports every single day. We are right now at about 750,000, so significantly less than half. So the travel industry, still pretty flat, keeping an eye on it, watching to see when that's going to start increasing, because when people are traveling, that means people are spending and business is getting back to business. It's another metric that I'm following every week. Let me give you a third metric. The ISM Service and Manufacturing Business Conditions Index. This is an index that's published every month by the Institute of Supply Managers. If you don't know who the Institute of Supply Management is, let me explain to you. It is an association that's made up of purchasing managers at companies all across the country. Now, if you want to be a member of this association, you have to be a certified purchasing manager, and you pretty much have to look like this. Okay. So if you are a member of the Institute of Supply Management, every month you are getting questioned from the ISM about where you're spending your money and how you're spending your money and what purchase orders that you have in and how long, what are your planned purchases over the next 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. The ISM breaks this out among service industries and manufacturing industries. And after they break them out, they publish it in a monthly index, which is very closely watched by a lot of smart economists. Now, this is the manufacturing index. I want to draw to your attention, if you see it here, it is gone down over here, right? It took a big dip during COVID, but just last month came back up again, all the way to where we're looking at levels pretty close to where they were back in January of 2017. So the bottom line is that it fell. It has been recovering. It is still nowhere near its previous highs that you can see, but it's recovering. And the levels that it's at right now are actually similar to levels that they were a few years ago. So that's a good sign. Will it continue to recover? Well, just since yesterday, they published a new chart, which I did not open this. I'm sorry I did not update this chart. It recovered even more from the last month of August. So that's also good news. Keep an eye on the ISM's Manufacturing and Business Conditions Index. So that's another metric that I like to follow. Here is a fourth one. The National Federation of Independent Businesses Small Business Confidence Index. Look, there's 30 million small businesses in this country. When they're feeling confident, that means that the economy is going okay, right? Well, every month they make a big poll and they publish it. It usually gets news among the economists and people like me that follow it. This is the index as of last month. You can see it took a big drop in April, but is recovered. However, in August, dipped a little bit more again. Even with that, small business confidence is still at the levels that it was back in 2017, right after Trump had won his election. So it is still, it's down off of its highs over the past couple of years. So that's not great, but it's recovered just a bit, although it took a little bit more of a dip. We have to see where it's going to be going. Then when you see a consistent trend of this going up month to month, that again will give you an indication that the economy is truly under recovery. So the NFIB index is good. National Association of Home Builders, we've heard about this, right? The construction industry has been booming. People are building houses. Some of them moving out of cities. Some are moving into the cities. People are doing renovations of existing houses. The NAHB, National Association Housing Index, is at its historic highs right now. There's a large survey of all the builders and contractors in the country, has a big impact on the construction industry. So that's a great sign, and that's also something I'm keeping an eye on as well. Two more. The Chemical Activity Barometer is done every month by the American Chemistry Council. They publish a survey similar to the ISM of all the chemical manufacturers, because everything that you see in front of us has chemicals behind it. When the chemical industries are doing good, that means U.S. manufacturing is doing good as well. Well, here's what the barometer is showing: steady increase over the years, and then a big drop, obviously, in the past couple of months. However, even that drop brings us to the levels that we saw going back to around 2014, 2015. So not great, not tragic, certainly not anywhere near the levels that we saw in the last recession, but they are where they are. So keep an eye on that. And one final metric that I'd like to follow, it is the Baltic Dry Index. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard of this. Here's what it is. It is an index of the cost of freight through the Baltic Sea. Now, full disclosure, if you gave me a map, I wouldn't even be able to find the Baltic Sea on it. For all I know, people are canoeing through the Baltic Sea right now. But as it turns out, the Baltic Sea is one of the most transversed or transgressed or transported area of international commerce and shipping in the entire world. So when freight rates are going up, that means there's more demand for shipping. And when they're coming down, there's less demand. Well, the Baltic Dry Index took a huge drop, obviously, in 2020 when the whole world shut down and the price of freight went down. But look how it has recovered since, which is a good sign for the world economy getting back to action and where they want. Still not back to where the levels were you can see behind me earlier, but still making good progress back there as well. So the Baltic Dry Index is another metric that I like to follow. Have your indexes that you follow. Those are 7 that I like to follow. Some people like to follow some other ones that are a little bit strange or not. Some people like the sales of recreational vehicles because that's a luxury item. So the more that people like to track that every month because that tells you where the economy is going good. I have an economist friend who tracks pet thefts in New York City. Not a joke. He literally gets the reports from all these different pet agencies that track when dogs are stolen, because his theory is the more dogs that are being stolen in the city, the worse the economy is because people are stealing dogs and selling them on the black market. What a sick individual he is to follow something like this. But listen, he's an economist and they're all kind of sick in their ways and another. So he tracks pet thefts. Some people like to track the lipstick index. I don't know if you've ever heard of this, but sales of lipstick tend to really go up in a recession. And the reason why is because women don't want to spend more money on more expensive cosmetics and perfumes, but a lipstick is relatively inexpensive and it makes you feel good. So in a recession, more lipsticks are sold. Unfortunately, it's been the opposite in this recession. Why? Because so many women are now working from home. They're not even my wife is wearing the same pair of sweatpants, I think, for the past 3 months working from home. People are just not using lipstick. So right now that indicator is not so great for this situation that we're in right now, but it's actually proven to be a kind of an unusual thing. Talk about unusual. Alan Greenspan, the former Federal Reserve chairman, right? Super smart guy, has all the data and statistics in the world to follow. What metric do you think Alan Greenspan follows to really put his fingers on the pulse of the economy? I will tell you what metric that is. It is men's underwear sales. Alan Greenspan every month to this day gets a report from the men's underwear industry as to how sales are going. And why does he do that? Well, I'll tell you why. The guy may look like kind of a nerdy guy, and actually I think he is kind of a nerdy guy, but let's all admit he's a guy. And guys, we all know when things are going good, we're buying new underwear. When things aren't going so good, we're turning them inside out, right? Okay, so it's a little secret. So Greenspan knows, that's why he follows men's underwear. You want to have a good index that you can follow as well. Now, I also like to follow some economists. And I think you should do that too, because you don't have time to do this stuff. You're running a business. You're out, you're repairing trucks. You're putting axles on vehicles. You are redoing carburetors, whatever the heck that you're doing. You're not an economist. You don't have time to do that. So follow a few good ones, because if you follow the right economists, they will update you every day with their emails and their updates of key economic data that you should know. Not gross domestic product or unemployment rate, which are so politicized to get revised and changed to 87 times before they're finalized. The data that I just shared you and a lot more. These are the guys I like to follow. I like Mark Perry. He writes a blog called Carpe Diem on the American Enterprise Institute. Leans a little bit to the right, but very, very good. Tracks all this kind of data. Bill McBride, I don't know if you noticed, but some of my charts said on the bottom, Calculated Risk blog, an excellent economic site where every day he's posting new charts of different things going on in the economy, like the ones like for example, like the TSA travelers, for example, or open reservations one, all those kinds of things he tracks too. Doug Short has a great one for financial advisors called advisorperspectives.com. Tyler Cowan, marginalrevolution.com. And if you really want to be blown away by statistics, go to tradingeconomics.com, and you can spend all day on there looking at real-time and updated economic statistics. Have a couple of economists that you follow, subscribe to them. You've got to stay ahead of this news. And one final thing, go to shortbee.com and subscribe there. Why? Shortbee.com has nothing to do with the economy. It is a site of redone, re-digitalized old photographs, like 100 years old plus photographs. And why is it good? Because shortbee.com, I get their email every day with one of these or two of these old photographs, and it puts things into perspective. Like when I'm having this day when like my school's principal is calling me and telling me that my kids are acting up and my boys are misbehaving and we need to come in, shortbee.com reminds me that, like my office, for example, if you're not happy with my office, this is the office that you could have been working 100 years ago. When my boys are misbehaving, Boys have been misbehaving for 100 years. Nothing is going to change. Oh, and by the way, girls have been misbehaving for 100 years. By the way, rich kids have been misbehaving for 100 years. So you have to worry about, it's not just your kids, okay? This has been going on forever. Kind of puts things into perspective, okay? When I get upset because people are wasting time on the internet, it reminds me that people have been dressing up cats for over 100 years and taking photographs of them. And finally, I have no idea what this photo is. If you know, it's like a kid and he's smoking a cigarette and there's a chicken next to him. And I got this emailed to me from Shorpy one day and I probably looked at it 100 times. If you know what it is or can figure it out, you can email me your thoughts and your ideas. Finally, before we leave the economy, a word about inflation. Some people think that inflation is coming. Some people think we could be in a deflation, like prices going down, which is a bad thing for the economy because the economy is not growing as well. Depends on what you think. I think there are a lot of inflationary pressures, three big ones. Number one, for example, is we've got a lot of frayed supply changes, which is making a lot of commodities a lot more expensive and hard to get. We've got commodity shortages of some raw materials out there that are driving up price as well. Most importantly, the bank deposits in the Federal Reserve right now, we have got more money in circulation right now than in decades. Really, historically, one of the highest levels of circulation of our money supply. This is the amount of money that the Federal Reserve has gone from 15 trillion to 17 trillion in just the course of the past year. $2 trillion made available to banks to provide liquidity for this system. It's a good thing and a lesson learned from the Depression. But let me tell you something. If the economy grows faster than the Fed thinks, that money comes more into circulation. People have more of a demand for money. That increases the price of money and increases inflation. Just last week, the Federal Reserve also announced that they're going to change their policies just a little bit. If they see inflation heated up, they're not going to raise interest rates for a while. They want inflation to go up. The Federal, Jerome Powell said they're fine if inflation goes up to 2, 3, 3.5%. Right now, it's below 2%. So the Fed is going to sit by and let it happen as inflation goes up. So we as business owners need to be prepared for that if it does happen. So what do you do if you think inflation is going to go up? And I personally think that it will. There are many economists that have different opinions on this. But what do you do if you think inflation is going to go up in the next couple of years? Well, a couple strategies. Number one, if you've got supply agreements for certain things for your shop, certain commodities that you're buying, certain parts that you're getting, great opportunity right now to lock them in. If you can do a deal for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years where you can set prices, I strongly recommend you consider that with your biggest suppliers. If you've got some key employees in your company that you don't want to lose, but at the same time, you don't want to start paying them a lot more money because inflation is going up, you want to be fair with them, but you also want to lock in an employee agreement with them as well. Interest rates, at some point, as inflation rises, the Fed is going to start raising interest rates. They say they're going to let it go for a while, but at some point, that's going to have to happen. So if you've got a variable rate loan, you want to lock things in as sooner rather than later. For a longer term, we are at historically low interest rates right now. Makes sense to turn that into a fixed loan and lock it in for a long time. Your lease agreements, there are landlords begging to keep their tenants around. They're scared and frightened that people are now going to be all working from home and nobody's going to go to an office anymore, which, by the way, is ridiculous. But it's a great opportunity that you can take to lock in on a long-term lease agreement as well. And if you've got some spare cash, investing in real estate, investing in certain commodities, investing in natural resources. Those are all the traditional inflation hedges that are out there that you want to keep in mind. I think inflation is going to go up. And listen, inflation right now is below 2%. It's like 1.8%. It could go up. Even if it goes to 3.5%, for example, which is not 1982 levels, that's still a doubling of prices that you're looking at, which could happen over the next couple of years. Keep that in your back of your mind. Smart business owners are always looking ahead. All right. Let's see what we've learned so far. True or false? Economists are in agreement that there will be a V-shaped recovery. Okay, that's false. Economists are not in agreement that there will be a V-shaped economy. Some think they will, some think they won't, some don't know, some think they know. We know that economists don't know. Why don't they know? This is why they don't know, okay? You need to be tracking some good metrics like the ones that I shared with you so you know when the economy is recovering so you can make your investment and your spending and your hiring decisions based on that. True or false? TSA traveler data is one indicator to measure economic recovery. Absolutely true, right? So bear that in mind. Open Table is another one. The Institute of Supply Managers, Business Conditions. I shared with you a few good metrics. Have a few of your own if you like some better, but those are the ones that I follow. True or false? Locking in long-term contracts is one good way to hedge against inflation. Absolutely true. If you, like me, think that inflation is going to rise and the Federal Reserve appears to have no problem with inflation going up, you might want to lock in on some long-term supply contracts, employment agreements, rental and lease agreements as well. Good time to keep your prices under control. True or false? Cutting tennis balls in half allows you to save space? Well, of course, it's absolutely true, right? I mean, just look at that photo. I mean, it makes complete sense. And true or false, there is a lifeguard in SpongeBob whose job is to save fish from drowning. True. Okay, so here's what we've learned so far. Restaurant reservations, TSA traffic, the Baltic Dry Index, these are among a few of the key metrics you need to be tracking to gauge economic recovery, right? As that, it affects all industries, including the automotive aftermarket industry. In addition, Mark Perry, Bill McBride, some of the economists I love to follow, they will give you a good idea as to what good metrics to follow, where things are going, and if inflation rises, consider long-term commitments. Next. It's election time. I mean, here we are. Today is what, September 3rd, is it? September, right? I mean, we're here, and then September 2nd. I don't even know what date it is. Oh, it's September 2nd. I'm looking at it. So we're only 2 months away from the next election, and it is absolutely a COVID-19 election is where we're in right now. And both parties have taken their stance, and here is where they stand. The Democrats, for example, have said exactly where they stand as we head into November. In fact, back in May, a couple months ago, the Democrats passed in the House their version of a stimulus bill. They called it the HEROES Act. And that is what Nancy Pelosi and the Democratic leaders are always referring to. It is providing more funding for states, schools, and housing in the wake of the COVID disaster. It is repealing, for some reason, the limited deduction of local taxes and real estate taxes, which the Democrats hated as part of the Tax Reform Act back in 2017. So they're kind of sneaking it into this bill. It doesn't have a whole lot to do really with the relief, but whatever. They want to extend federal unemployment benefits, the $600 a month check that people are getting when they're unemployed. The Democrats want to extend that through January of 2021. Paid family leave, which we are all required to pay, including those of us who have employees who must stay home with their kids because their kids have to do virtual learning or getting homeschooled because their schools are closed. Even if they're staying home from their jobs and they can't work from home, we're required under law to continue to pay them at least 2/3 of their salary for 12 weeks. The HEROES bill says we want to continue those types of benefits through all of 2021. They want to give a $1,200 rebate for everybody and provide a bunch of more funding for the Postal Service as well. That's all part of the HEROES Act that passed back in May. Now, that's the stimulus. The Democrats have also taken positions on some other big things that affect the economy, like, for example, healthcare. So at the end of June, the Democrats passed their health care bill, which is really just an affirmation of the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare. They want to bring all of it back. They want to expand it throughout the country. They want to provide private health subsidies. They want to expand Medicaid. They want to reverse all of the president's orders that he has, executive orders, which are for healthcare reimbursement accounts and association health plans. They do not want to have a public option, so no government-run healthcare, but they do want to provide healthcare for dreamers and other immigrants, and restrict drug pricing as well. All of these things are, for the most part, other than the public option, for the most part, are all supported by candidate Joe Biden as well. So the Democrats, they passed that in the House. That's what they want healthcare to be under a Biden presidency and a Democratic majority in Congress. So that happened at the end of June. And finally, there's the infrastructure bill. So the Democrats, beginning of July, they passed in the House a bill, $1.5 trillion for new infrastructure. They want to reduce emissions. They want to have electric vehicles and trains, funding for that, more funding for schools, more funding for hospitals, more funding for broadband, drinking water, the energy grid, and vehicle safety. Very similar to what the Republicans want, believe it or not. We're going to see some type of infrastructure bill in 2021, but more of a leaning towards more environmental stuff and green stuff. There was the big green bill that passed in the House, last year as well. So there's parts of that that are in this infrastructure bill as well. So the big stimulus bill is the HEROES Act. We have a healthcare bill. We have an infrastructure bill that all came from the Democrat side. And let's forget, as Vice President Biden is running for president, there are other, pet things that he supports that we should be aware of as well as business people. Biden himself is a very good candidate, a very good guy with a lot of experience, been around for a while. But there are certain things that he does support that are a little bit business unfriendly. So there are some decisions that you're going to have to make. For example, candidate Biden supports a national $15 an hour minimum wage. So a lot of states and cities have kind of taken it upon themselves to do that, but under President Biden, he would be a big supporter of doing that. He wants to increase overtime wages now to $47,000 a year, which means that if you have any employees that are making up to $47,000 and say they're an administrator or they're like a salaried person, they're not supervising anybody, you would have to pay them overtime for any hours that they work in excess of 40 hours. Right now, that number is about $35,000 a year. He wants to increase it up to $47,000 a year. He is a supporter of mandated paid time off. So right now, we've got the Family and Medical Leave Act, which mandates employers over 50 employees to provide unpaid leave. He's a supporter for all employers, regardless of size, to provide paid leave if people need to take paid time off. New parents or a family sick number, the employers should be paying. So he's a supporter of that as well. He is a supporter of limitations on outside contractors. The state of California passed at the end of the year, which just went into effect this year, some new rules on using outside contractors. Companies like Uber and Lyft have been appealing this and are threatening to leave the state because of what the rules are. The rules essentially come down to this, is that if you're using an outside person, a contractor, to do revenue generating work for your business, you have to classify them as an employee. So say you've got somebody that's like, I don't know, an expert in doing painting for cars that come in the shop, but he's not an employee. You just come and you contract out with him, he comes in, and then you bill out for his work. The guy comes in, he works 10 hours, you bill him out for 10 hours or whatever. Under the California rules, you would have to be classifying that person as an employee, providing retirement benefits or vacation benefits, healthcare, all that kind of stuff. So it's only in California right now. Some other states like Illinois and New York and New Jersey are looking at it as well. Joe Biden is a big supporter of that, would like to see that across the country. And finally, he's a supporter of non-compete agreements coming out of employment agreements. So if you have a non-compete clause with an employee and the employee leaves your company, they should be allowed to go and look for jobs in your industry or with competitors. He's a supporter of that, to give more choice to employees if they leave an organization. On taxes also, Vice President Biden is also a supporter of raising taxes, mainly on the wealthy, people earning more than $400,000 a year. So he wants to raise the tax rates on those people up to 39.6%. He does want to raise the corporate rate from the current 21% to 28%. That's for people filing C corporations. He does want to increase capital gains, again for the wealthy, so that they would be taxed at their ordinary rates. And he wants to increase that FICA limit on your employee. Right now, if you earn anything more than $133,000, you're not subject to a Social Security, a FICA tax. He wants to bump that up to $250,000. So those are some tax increases that we would all have to deal with under a potential tax increases under a Biden presidency. So you have to weigh, the good and the bad. Now, on the Republican side, they did not pass this. It's got Senate approval, though. It's been, this is the end of July. It's called the HEALS Act. This is the Republican stimulus bill, right? And it's different from the Democrats' bill. They, like the Democrats, do support a stimulus payment. However, they want to reduce that monthly unemployment check to $200. The president signs an executive order which goes into effect this month. 30 plus states have already agreed to it, that the federal government will pay an additional $300, even without this HEALS Act, of unemployment to people that in certain states that agree to go along with this, but it's less than the $600 that the Democrats want. The individuals would get $100 for education, and they would also get federally backed mortgage forbearance if they can't pay their mortgages because of COVID. This will all be part of their stimulus. For businesses, the Republicans are proposing liability protection for all businesses. Nobody can sue you if they come into your business and they test positive for COVID. The Democrats are opposed to that. It is a big contentious issue. And right now, if you do get sued, you do not have insurance coverage for that. And I believe that's holding back a lot of businesses from reopening. I think it's holding back a lot of big companies from sending their people traveling or to conferences, or and I think that's hurting a lot of small businesses because those companies are scared if an employee could sue them because they contracted COVID while on the job. The Republicans' bill would protect them from that. Also, the Republican bill gives $190 billion more for the Paycheck Protection Program, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Okay, so in addition to the Republicans, the president, so we know, also supports 1.7 trillion in infrastructure, not as green and environmental as a lot of the Democrats are supporting, but a lot of the same stuff, right? The infrastructure, the roads, transportation, all that kind of stuff. We're going to see an infrastructure bill sometime in 2021. The president continues to support broad deregulation. He has not proposed any increase to payroll taxes. He wants to completely repeal Obamacare and reinforce his executive orders with more, for association health plans and healthcare reimbursement accounts, and give more employer options for their employees while getting rid of Obamacare. And finally, on compensation, he does support a $12 an hour minimum wage, and he does support paid family medical leave, just like Joe Biden does. But the president, he's proposed this a couple times in his budget, wants the federal government to pay for this through unemployment, as opposed to making employers pay for this. But just so you know, Trump does. The bottom line is this, guys, okay? Trump himself, if you vote for Trump, his policies are definitely more business friendly than Biden. But of course, if you vote for Trump, you'll get 4 more years of Trump. So that's a lot of things that people are trying to decide as to what they want to. They want to put up with Trump because his policies are more business friendly or not. Those are the choice that you'll have to make. Hey, listen, maybe you won't even have to make them, because look, an asteroid's supposed to hit the Earth like literally right before Election Day. So maybe we don't even have all these problems to worry about. Who knows? But if the asteroid skirts Earth before then you got to worry about these kinds of things. So hopefully this kind of information helps. All right, true or false? The Heroes Bill from the Democrats provides special stimulus funds for Marvel and DC Comics. Okay, obviously that's false, right? The Heroes Bill is the stimulus bill proposed by the Democrats, which provides $600 unemployment checks through January, continues on with all the vacation and coronavirus family relief payments that employers have to make through the end of 2021, among other things as well. True or false? Both Trump and Biden support more infrastructure spending. True. In fact, Trump has proposed 1.7 trillion, and the Democrats have proposed 1.5 trillion. We're going to see some infrastructure spending in 2021 that definitely has bipartisan support. And true or false, this voter remains undecided. Absolutely true. This woman is completely undecided. I don't think she's ever going to decide, but if she decides, it's going to be at the last minute. So don't mess with her and don't ask her any questions about who she's voting for. She doesn't even want to hear it, okay? Here's what we've learned. We learned about restaurant reservations and all the metrics. We've learned about the economists that we want to follow. We've learned about inflation, that I think it's going to go up. Some people disagree, I get that, but if you think it is, we've discussed some strategies that you can follow. We learned that a Biden presidency would bring more regulations and higher workplace protections and higher taxes, so a few business unfriendly things, but we've also learned that a Trump presidency would bring more Trump. Okay, so as we move forward into 2021, as we go beyond the pandemic, and you're fixing cars, you're building engines, you're painting, you're doing collision work, you're reselling, parts, whatever you're doing in the automotive industry, there are opportunities that are out there. There are things that you should be considering as you're looking beyond, so that you can better run your business over the next couple of years. And let me share with you what some of these big opportunities are, because they're very much worth mentioning. The first opportunity I have to share with you is about funding. I mean, I said earlier that never in the 25 years that I've been running my business have I seen such uncertainty around, because of COVID and the elections coming up and all that. Well, I got to tell you something. I've never seen so many funding opportunities that are out there for businesses that you really, really should be aware of. And let me share with you some of the big ones that I think are really worth noting. Now, I mentioned the Paycheck Protection Program. That expired on August the 8th. So right now, you can't get a paycheck protection loan. It's gone. There's bipartisan support for the next stimulus bill, and there will be a stimulus bill. And I'm going to tell you why there's going to be a stimulus bill. Because by September 30th, the government is going to run out of money. So Congress has to come up with a funding bill for the government. And what's going to happen once the Senate gets back from its recess, which will be next week, and everybody starts yelling and screaming at each other again, and more pressure builds. There's going to be a funding bill to take the government funding into the next fiscal year. But in addition to that, they're going to tack on a lot of the stimulus measures that we see both in the HEROES bill and in the HEALS Act. Okay, there's big disagreements over unemployment checks. There's big disagreements about business liabilities. There's big disagreements about other funding things. But one thing there is not big disagreement is helping small businesses. And that's why the Paycheck Protection Act is absolutely going to be part of it. Now, the Republicans set aside $190 billion for it. It's another round, another paycheck protection program. Gavin mentioned at the beginning of this that there was a survey that came out with about 50 people in the industry. 50% of the people said that their business is actually better, their revenues have grown. But that means half of the people in this industry that replied had the opposite going on, right? So maybe their business hasn't grown, maybe it's fallen. Well, you can apply for another paycheck protection loan if you got it, even if you got it the first time. So there's a couple things you need to know. Right now, the rules will be that you can apply for it only if your business has suffered a 50% or more decline in revenues this year compared to last year. Now, there are certain people that are arguing against saying, can we make it 30% or 25%, not as high as 50%. So it might be less than that, but it is 50% right now is where we are. So you can apply for another loan. That's number one. Number two, which is also really big, is they've expanded the definition of non-payroll expenses in this bill. So not only can you get forgiveness for your payroll and your rent and your utilities, but you'll be able to get forgiveness for your internet expenses, some other internal operating expenses, as well as expenses for personal protection equipment, things like that. So that's also good. Here's the big thing for all of you if you got a paycheck protection loan. If this bill passes, and I do expect it to happen before the end of September, if you have a loan for less than $2 million, you will be automatically forgiven. And let me explain to you the details of that. If your loan is less than $150,000, you got it earlier, right? If your loan was $150,000, you are just going to have to represent to your bank, fill out just write down, I represent that I've incurred the expenses necessary for forgiveness. So all the banker needs is something in writing with your signature. They'll pass that on to the SBA. Boom. No application, no documentation, no accountants, no lawyers, no nothing. You're just going to be forgiven. If your loan is less than $2 million, but greater than $150,000, you will have to fill out the forgiveness application with your bank, but you will no longer have to provide all the documentation that they're requiring you to provide. You just fill out the form, and then that's it. You're going to get forgiven. It doesn't mean that the SBA can't come back and look at you or audit you if they suspect any funny business. But for the most part, they're forgiving all loans under $2 million. If your loan is more than $2 million, you're going to have to go through the forgiveness process. That's what's included in the second round of Paycheck Protection Program. Look for that to happen before the end of September. Number two, economic injury disaster loans still available. Every state has been designated a disaster area still through the end of the year. There's about $60 billion left in that fund. That's a lot of money. You can go out and borrow directly from the Small Business Administration. You can borrow for 30 years, 3.75% interest rate is what it is. I think the loans themselves are like $2 million that you can get to help you through this. Even if all you have to do is say, I'm in a state impacted by COVID, which all of us has, and you get a long-term fixed loan that you can use to navigate your business through all of this. So economic injury disaster loans, a great area of funding for you. Tax deferrals and the employee retention tax credit. Now, we're hearing a lot about the president's executive orders for individuals can defer their payroll taxes. Let's ignore that for now. You as an employer can defer your federal payroll taxes. So that's the taxes that you pay, your FICA taxes, your 6.2% FICA tax that you pay. You don't have to pay it. You don't even have to apply for it. You don't have to be affected by COVID. You don't have to be accepted into any program. Just when you do your 941 returns for the end of last quarter, the end of this coming quarter as well, you don't have to pay your FICA taxes. You do have to pay it eventually. And when you have to pay it, will have to be 50% at the end of 2020 and the other 50% by the end of 2021. But you can defer that money now. It's an interest-free loan that you basically keep in your bank for 2 years, just about, and you can use it for anything you want. You will have to pay it back, but you've got the cash available and in the bank for you. Now, that's the tax deferrals for corporations, for companies. There's also the employee retention tax credit. If your business suffered a 50% decline in revenues this quarter or any quarter through the end of the year because of COVID, you can take advantage of the employee retention tax credit. Again, you have to apply for it. You just do this on your quarterly return. It's up to $5,000 per employee. You can take that credit against the taxes that you owe. This is not a deferral. You basically get the money back. So if you don't have to pay the taxes, you don't have to pay them at all. And if you paid in more taxes, then the credit will come back to you and you get the cash in your account. So talk to your accountant, talk to your payroll company, take advantage of these government loan programs or grant programs in the form of the employee retention tax referral. The Main Street Lending Program, not as popular as I thought it would be, but if you're a little bit of a bigger size business, the minimum loan is $250,000. The loan is for about 5 years. It's at market rates, which is about 3 to 4% right now. Most banks can offer them if they're affiliated with the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is trying to get them to make these loans to businesses that need it. Here's the thing that most people don't know about the Main Street Lending Program. When you borrow money under the program, if you pay it back early, you don't pay any penalties. So if you go ahead, borrow $300,000 or $250,000 or $500,000 onto the program, stick the money in an investment or a bank account, stare at it. I hope you never have to use it because things are going fine. If you don't feel like you need it after 6 months, pay it back. You won't pay any penalties, but it's there in case you do need it. And who knows what's going to happen over the next 6 months. So it's another form of financing that you can get that the government is encouraging banks to loan that money out. There are work sharing programs. 27 states participate in this. Look at the link that's here, this URL. And by the way, I'm going to give you my email at the end. You can send me, I'll send you this PDF if you'd like it. Go to this work sharing site, go to your state, ask them to apply for the work sharing program. They will pay a portion of your employees' wages, and you pay the other portion of your employees' wages. So your employees keep their jobs, you keep your employees, and the state keeps them off the unemployment rolls. So it's a great mutual beneficial program. It's been around for a few years, been a lot more popular over the past couple of years. Workers' comp. If you've sent your workers home because of COVID, if they're still working from home, if you have a policy where you're letting them continue to work from home, just remember that your workers' comp rates for those people working at home, they should be classified as clerical. Okay, so if they were working in your company at a more riskier classification and you were paying insurance at that riskier levels, now you should be paying insurance for them at the lowest level possible, clerical, because they're working from home. So talk to your workers' comp insurance people and make sure that you get that adjustment made and get any refunds that you might have overpaid your workers' comp insurance over the past few months because of this misclassification issue. Make sure that you talk to them about that. Finally, and most importantly, there is a little provision of the CARES Act from March that expires on September 27th. So get cracking with this one. Go to the Small Business Administration, ask for a Section 7A loan. It's been around for ages. You can use it for working capital. You can use it to buy property, to buy equipment, to buy a competitor's business. You can use it for all these different things. Buy inventory with it, that's all fine. Here's the thing. If you get a Section 7A loan, because of the CARES Act, your first 6 months of principal and interest will be forgiven, not deferred, completely forgiven, which means if you get like a $500,000 loan, you do not ever have to pay about $33,000 under that loan. They're literally giving you that money, but you've got to get the loan done by September 27th. So today is September 2nd, 25 days left to go. Talk to your banker about that, or the SBA, the Small Business Administration, a huge, huge thing that you should be taking advantage of. You can use it for any purpose. So funding, a giant opportunity that has been created. Labor disruption is another giant opportunity that's been created. I mean, we've got millions of people that are unemployed. Wasn't our biggest problem just a few months ago finding good people, finding a living, breathing person to come and work in your shop? Well, guess what? They're all over the place. And now they're not only millions of unemployed, sadly, a lot of them are not going to go back to their prior jobs. And now that unemployment benefits have gone down, and now that a lot of the cities and states are starting to reopen themselves, this is the best time possible to find good people for your company. Go to ZipRecruiter or Indeed or LinkedIn or talk to people at SEMA as well. These are the people that can help you locate good people that are out there. Get a Section 7A loan if you need the working capital to do it. But if you're going to make any investments now, invest in people. Find them, grab them, pay them well, pay them fairly, get them on board. This is your opportunity to find the people that you've been looking for the past few years, because the economy is going to come back. And when it does, you're going to have the resources to be able to meet your customers' demands. Commercial properties and rents, real estate markets all across the country have been hit because of COVID. And that presents opportunities for people who've got a few extra bucks to spend. Again, maybe that Section 7A loan from the SBA. Go to Reonomy.com or LoopNet.com or Crexy.com, where you can find deals in your local area for real estate that you can get. A lot of people getting rid of a distressed asset and equipment as well, because some of your competitors might be going out of business. Check out RVAuction.com or our local auctioneers. And don't forget that Section 179 deduction. If you buy an asset or equipment, not only can you use that loan and not have to pay the principal and interest, but you can deduct the entire amount in your first year if you qualify, and most small businesses do. Huge tax savings on top of savings because of the CARES Act as well. Some more, there's been increased M&A. I'm telling you, so many people, the average age of the U.S. small business owner is about 52 years old. I'm 55 years old. I'm exhausted. I know a lot of my clients, they're exhausted. And this COVID thing, that's done it for them. They want out. It's a great opportunity to sell your business, and it's a great opportunity to buy a business. Interest rates are low. Capital gains rates are low for now, depending on who wins the election. Inflation is also low. The stock market is very risky to go into. Here's an opportunity for you to sell your company. And here's an opportunity if you're a young entrepreneur, or maybe you want to buy up a competitor, want to get into a line of business. Great opportunity to buy companies. BizBuySell.com has been reporting a huge influx of requests for people looking to buy and sell their companies, all because of what's been going on. Obviously, remote working, sending your view, it works, right? We know the cloud works. E-commerce, if you're selling anything online right now, e-commerce sales have increased 35% over last year. 30, and it's not just Amazon and eBay and Craigslist and and Alibaba. It's not just Etsy, right? Remember, there's millions of small businesses that sell on those platforms. Even if you want to sell on your own, look at Shopify, look at Magento. Those two things, they integrate your point of sale with your e-commerce site. So if somebody goes to your website to buy something, if it's not an inventory in your store, it won't show up on your website, right? So it integrates it all together. Fantastic software. And if you're selling on e-commerce and you're selling around the country, you got to get Avalara, because Avalara deals with all of the sales tax headaches that you're going to be encountering. Because trust me, all these states that are dying for money right now, they're now allowed to go out and collect sales tax for people that are selling in their states. They're going to be doing a lot of that. So you want to make sure that you're in compliance. Use a service like Avalara. Now is the time to do disaster planning. I mean, have we learned this is right? We should be disaster planning. And finally, I have to say about Chapter 11, not as bad thing as you think. Okay? Chapter 11 is the reorganization for bankruptcy. A new law passed at the end of last year, which just went into effect this year, called the Small Business Reorganization Act. It lets small companies file Chapter 11 way more easier and way more less expensive than ever before. Plus, your assets are protected. Plus, you don't have to go through all the bureaucracy and all the court things that you've had to do in the past. It's a brand new law. It makes it easier for you to reorganize. Yes, there's some PR issues. Yes, it's going to impact your credit report. But I have a lot of clients that are considering reorganization as a strategy, because that way, in these uncertainties created by COVID, they file Chapter 11. They can do it cheaply. they renegotiate with their vendors and their suppliers, and then they make a plan for re-emerging back into the world sometime in early 2021. It's a strategy, and it's something that you might want to consider. So the downturn has created all of these big opportunities. So true or false, and then we'll get to some questions. The CARES Act tax deferrals essentially provides a no-interest government loan for up to 2 years. True. Remember that. Defer your federal payroll taxes. It's you just have to pay it back over the next 2 years, but it's money that you could have in your bank. True or false? Speaking of money, if a business closes on a SBA Section 7A loan before September 27th, you will have your first 6 months principal and interest forgiven. True. 6 months completely forgiven. So talk to your SBA banker about that now. True or false? BizBuySell is a great place to find a potential M&A opportunity. Absolutely true, a great place to go. If you're looking to buy, this is a great time to sell your business or buy into a business. True or false, up until 1915, it was legal to mail a baby as long as he or she was under 15 pounds. It's actually false. The baby needed to be under 11 pounds, and then you could mail the baby. And true or false, according to the Journal of Microbiology, 80% of fast food drink dispensers contain fecal matter. Okay, it's false. It's only 50%. You don't have to worry about it. People get worried. They hear 80%. They get upset. It's only 50%. All right, let's see what we learned. All right. Metrics to see where the economy is going. Restaurant reservations, TSA traffic, Baltic Dry Index. I shared with you a bunch. Have your own, but you got it so that you know when to start spending your money and investing and hiring people. Mark Perry, Bill McBride. I shared with you a bunch of economists that you should be following as well. If inflation rises, I think you do. I share with you some strategies. Lock in on those supply agreements, employment agreements, rental agreements. These are all things to think ahead to control your costs. A Biden presidency, a good candidate in Joe Biden. He's got a lot of great things to offer, but admittedly, some of his policies are not so business friendly, not as much as Trump. But then again, electing Trump will give you 4 more years of Trump, so that's going to be a decision that you're going to have to make. Take that decision with you to the voting box. Tax credits, SBA loans, workers' comp savings. These are just a few of the significant funding options that are out there, and keep your eyes on that new stimulus bill and a new paycheck protection program. And labor disruption, distressed equipment sales, working from home, bankruptcies, M&A. These are all opportunities that are out there for you now as we go beyond the pandemic. This is where you can profit and grow your business. Remember, just keep your eye on the ball. Always need to be looking ahead. That's what the smartest business owners that I work with are always doing. They're not looking behind. They're always looking ahead. They never know what's coming down the road. And in these uncertain times, that's something that we all want to keep in mind. My new book is called Want More Cash, 100+ great ideas and strategies to increase your cash flow this year, available on Amazon. Come on out and buy that book for me, please. You will really enjoy it. I've got some of my tactics that I shared here are also in the book. So true or false, you are much smarter than you were a mere 60 minutes ago? Yeah, that's absolutely true. True. Here is my email address. It's gene@marksgroup.net. Feel free to email me any questions that you have, or if you'd like a copy of this presentation, I'm more than happy to send it to you via a PDF. So Gavin, I apologize. You've got like just a couple of minutes left, but you want to come on in? I don't know if we got any questions or not, but I figured let me turn it back to you and let me know what you want to do.
Quick one. You talked about locking in some long-term contracts. Are there things that are super important to do with that and things that are less viable?
So here's the super important thing is, if you have a significant supplier in your business that is delivering specific parts or materials that you know that you're going to need over the next couple of years, those are the people that you want to focus on first. The employment agreements right now, I mean, typical cost of living wages are 2%, 3%. I mean, you can pretty much handle that, and unless you've got somebody really expensive, that's something that would be a second priority. So, I mean, Gavin, the biggest thing I can say to you is look at your biggest vendors and suppliers. Who are you getting your materials from? Try to lock down prices, because you really could be seeing some of those materials costs go up 3-4% or more if inflation goes up, and now's a great time to lock it down.
Awesome. Gene, this was great. Huge amount of content. I'm sure everybody got lots of good stuff out of there. We really thank you for being here, and thank you everybody else for being here too. We really appreciate you coming to our webinar. And that wraps up our Shifting Gears Back to Business series. Thanks again for attending. Gene, thank you for the insight. This is awesome. I'm sure everyone is walking away with lots of great ideas they can implement. So we will be sending you out some information, including the recording of this that you can refer back to. You can share with other people. You'll also receive potentially a short survey, so please give us some feedback. Let us know how we're doing. That's the way we improve, okay? In case you missed any of the other topics that we've done in our series, you can go to the website and you can watch them on demand. Go to SEMA.org/reopen. And that's all we have for today. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Thanks again,
Thanks,
Gene.
Gavin.